Hello guys, welcome back. This is the second session of Gulick and Ervik session. Please watch the first session of Gulick and Ervik before going ahead. Link for the same would be in the description of this video. So moving on. Now Luther Gulick gave us a human factor and a time factor in public administration. As it is well known, classical theory neglects the human side of the organization. Various critics have criticized over time that classical theory is a mechanistic theory. It lacks the human emotions and human side of the organizations. So what happened is, after 1937 publication of his papers, Luther Gulick later on he confirmed some human factors and time in the theory of public administration. We'll learn about those now. So starting with the human factor that Gulick said, Gulick in his later writings, after critics had criticized his writings on the lack of human emotions and negligence of human side of the organization, in his later writings, Gulick has noted that much has happened to affect the field of public administration and his analysis of its nature since he edited papers on science and administration 50 years ago. So after 50 years, he came back and he said that much has happened and much has changed to affect the field of public administration. Based upon 50 years of his analysis, he notes that after all, governments are constituted of human beings, are run by human beings, and have as their main job helping, controlling, and serving human beings. So after 50 years, he himself acknowledged whatever the critics have criticized, they are correct, they are right, and 50 years have passed and much has changed, and whatever I had written 50 years ago does not hold so much of value after 50 years now. And after 50 years, he said that after all, governments are constituted of human beings, they are run by human beings, and have as their main job helping, controlling, and serving human beings. So he acknowledged the human factor in public administration. In short, human beings are the most important variables for understanding the nature of public administration today and guiding the field into the future. Human beings are the dynamic factors that are intrinsic in the study of administration. These are the words of Luther Gulick. According to him, main functions of the state are human welfare, survival and improvement to meet the challenges of ever-changing environment, and not war. War is not the main function of state. Gulick says that the main function of state is human welfare, survival and improvement, and not war. The structure of the modern state is distinctly military. It is authoritative, it is highly centralized, and all the work but not the authority is assigned to subordinates. So subordinates are assigned all the work, all the responsibilities, but they are not given requisite authority to execute those work, to execute those responsibility. Modern state is highly authoritative and highly centralized and distinctly military in nature. This is what Gulick says, and this is why he says that main function of state is not war, and yet structure of modern state is distinctly military. In public administration, our very vocabulary is military in origin. Whatever vocabulary we use in public administration, that is even military origin. How? We talk about line and staff, which are borrowed from military. We talk about field commanders in public administration. We talk about material and manpower. These are all military terms. These are all military vocabulary origins. In our own very public administration vocabulary is military in origin. This is what Luther Gulick says. And when we make the cost benefit analysis, we manipulate hard statistics and not human values and human welfare. So he himself acknowledges that we have basically neglected the human values and neglected the human emotions and human side of the organization. Gulick says, bring more decentralization by replacing the present centralized hierarchical military structure. So I hope you understand all of these points now. What Luther Gulick has said is the main function of state is not war, it is human welfare, but yet the structure of modern state is distinctly military and the vocabulary of public administration is also military in origin. What we need is more decentralization by replacing the present military structure, which is centralized and hierarchical. So this is how Gulick has identified the human factor in public administration. He also suggests that public administration should forget the non-existent economic man. We know what economic man is. Taylor propagated economic man, Henry Fayol propagated economic man, even Gulick and Ervik propagated economic man in their 1937 writings. Economic man means a person who is solely motivated by money and not by social factors and psychological factors, who is solely motivated by money. So what Luther Gulick says is, public administration should forget the non-existent economic man. Economic man is not existent anymore. It does not exist anymore. And we should forget about this non-existent economic man, and we should include human welfare and compassion in its embrace. So after 50 years of publication of his papers, Luther Gulick identified that human values are important in organization. About time factor in public administration, what he said we'll see. Gulick also emphasizes that time is the crucial factor in every event. Time is the very crucial event. Without it, there is no change, no growth, no cause and effect, and no responsibility for management. He notes that in democracy, timing is the hallmark of statecraft. So time is of great importance in democracy. This is what Luther Gulick says. But he laments that time has been a neglected factor in public administration. It is so important, but yet it has been neglected. This is what Gulick says. Gulick identifies 5 different aspects of time. Time as an input, time as an output, time as the flow of events, time as a gap between two or more significant events, time as a management policy. So time can be in any form, in the form of any of these 5 aspects. This is how important time is in public administration in today's time. He emphasizes that time has practical and significant implications for PubEd. It means that the principles of management of administration should be eternally tied to the culture in which they arise, and that the culture must evolve appropriately well before major changes in human organization can be successfully undertaken. So to understand this, you have to understand that every society has some culture which evolves and advances with respect to time, and whatever organization you establish, that organization is established in a society, in an environment which has some culture around it, right? And what classical theorists did was they gave us some principles of management of administration. So what Gulick here says is, those principles of management that I gave you, that Urvik gave you, that Fayol gave you, those principles of management of administration should be eternally tied to the culture in which they arise. So whatever organization you are building upon, if you are building up a department of welfare or a department of education, you are building it in particular society. So if you are applying my principles in those organizations that you are building up, those principles that you are applying should be eternally tied to the culture of the society that you are building up in, and that the culture must evolve appropriately well before major changes in human organization can be successfully undertaken. So there are virtually 2 parts of organization, you can say. One is material part of organization and one is human part of organization. And if you are undertaking a change in human organization, on the human side of your organization, you must appropriate the proper culture that you are in, and that culture must evolve appropriately before you change your human organization. So this is how Gulick says that time is important in public administration. Time is essential for any organization, as it is not a machine but an organism. Organization is not a machine. Gulick, after 50 years, himself agreed that organization is not a machine. Organization is an organism. It is a living and breathing organism. It has a human side to it. It has human emotions and values attached to it. So timing is essential for any organization, because organization is not a machine, it is an organism. He emphasizes that time must become a central strategic and moral concern in public management. Therefore, government must plan and work with this flow in time and for time. So if you have some strategic concerns of your organization, if you have some moral concerns of your organization, time must become one of those moral concerns and one of those strategic concerns, because it is important. And governments must work with this flow in time, with the changing needs of society. You should be evolving and adapting to the time. You should be evolving and adapting to the culture which is evolving with the time. So government must plan and work with this flow in time and for time, for the appropriate culture and adapting to the appropriate culture. So this is nothing but time factor in public administration after 50 years that Luther Gulick came and gave us. Moving on with criticisms of Gulick and Urvik. Now remember that these criticisms can be used in general for the entire criticism of classical theory, because what classical theory deals with is, it gives us some principles. Fayol gives us 14 principles, Gulick gives us 10 principles, Urvik gives us 8 and then 29 principles. So basically every classical theory gives us some principles. So these criticisms can be used in general for all the criticism of classical theory. Even criticisms of Fayolism can be used in this context of Gulick and Urvik. So remember this. So first we will criticize the principles of organization. Now why we are criticizing principles of organization in Gulick and Urvik's lecture and we did not do it in Fayol's lecture? Because Gulick and Urvik gave us very exhaustive list of principles. If you remember, they elaborated on Henry Fayol's 14 principles and they gave us a very exhaustive list. So Gulick and Urvik in 1937 reached the zenith of classical organization. So basically whatever principles of organizations are criticized by critics, they are criticized keeping in mind Gulick and Urvik and not Fayol. They are obviously criticized criticize Fayol also, but basically they criticize Gulick and Ervik. So one of those criticisms is, while writing so much about principles, these authors, all of these classical thinkers, have not made it clear as to what they meant by them. They wrote so much about it, but they did not make it clear as to what they actually meant by them. This is the first criticism. Normally, principles are said to be universal truths subject to verification. However, such universal validity appears to be absent in them, absent in the principles. Critics have criticized that the principles of organization are not universal in nature. The authors of these principles have definitely said that they are universal, but critics have said that they are not universal in nature. They appear more in the nature of postulates. What are postulates? They are nothing but beliefs or assumptions of one person based on his own experience, and when he gives out to the public, it becomes a postulate. So they appear more in the nature of postulates of experienced men who have closely observed organizations at work. They are not universal truths, but they are in the nature of postulates. At best, they may be action recommendations, but not specific principles. At best, they are just action recommendations, that you should decentralize, that you should have less span of control, that you should divide the work, and that you should specialize. They are just action recommendations, but not specific principles. They are not universal truths. This is what the critics have criticized. L.D. White, Leonard D. White, is another critic who says that while the terms line, staff and auxiliary agencies, hierarchy, authority, centralization, etc. are useful terms for describing or classifying administrative situations, they are no more than that. So all these terms, line, staff and all these terms, hierarchy, authority, centralization, they just describe situations and they do nothing more than that. They provide no guidance as to whether a given system more or less should be highly centralized. So centralization and decentralization are just terms which define situations, and these terms do not provide any guidance as to whether your organization should be highly or less centralized, nor as to whether auxiliary agency should be given more or fewer duties or authority. So these terms are just describing the situations and they do nothing more than that. They are not rules. They suggest only working rules of conduct which wide experience seem to have validated. Just because of their wide experience, they are just working rules of conduct. They are not universal rules. They are not actually principles. They are not universal principles. This is the basic criticism of principles of organization, that they are not universal in nature, they are not actually rules, they are just working rules of conduct and nothing more. Continuing with the principles of organization criticism, Herbert Simon, which is also one of our thinkers which we will study in our syllabus, Herbert Simon has profusely attacked the principles. He has attacked the principles the most. We will see what Herbert Simon said about principles of organization in this slide. He said that principles are just homely proverbs, घरेलू कहावतें हैं सिर्फ. They are just homely proverbs, myths, slogans, inanities. It is a fatal defect of the current principles of administration. Like proverbs, they occur in pairs. For almost every principle, one can find an equally acceptable contradictory principle. So like proverbs, these principles occur in pairs. One is positive and one is negative. For example, while principle of division of work is claimed as essential, coordination principle is also claimed as essential. So basically, division of work and coordination principles are opposites of each other. They do not go hand in hand. If you divide your work, you are basically not coordinating because you are dividing your work. Now of course there will be integration of those divided work, but basically the coordination principle has taken a back step here because now you have divided the work, there is now less coordination. So basically for every principle one can find an equally acceptable contradictory principle. Coordination principle is in contradiction to principle of division of work. One of the proverbs, this is what Herbert Simon says, that these are not principles, they are proverbs. So when he refers to principles, he refers to them as proverbs just to make fun of them. So one of the proverbs say that administrative efficiency is increased by specialization, but it is not made clear whether area specialization good or functional specialization is good. So Henry Fayol, Gulick, Ervik, everyone, Mooney and Riley also we will study in our future session, that every classical thinker has emphasized on specialization, but no one has said that whether area specialization is good or functional specialization is good. They have given us 4 bases of specialization of dividing work, that divide based on function, divide based on area or place, but they have not said that which one of them is good. So these are just proverbs. They say that you need specialization for increased efficiency, but they do not say whether area specialization is needed or functional specialization is needed. Contradiction is also between specialization and unity of command. The specialists in organization are always subject to dual control of generalists and technocrats. Now this is something you will learn again in module 4 of organizations. What this basically means is, If there is a specialist in an organization, if there is a person who specializes in something, now remember, specialist is a staff authority. He is not a line authority. He is a staff authority. He is a person of special staff. So a person of specialization always has dual command. One of his generalist manager of the line authority and one of his technical manager, the technocrat of the specialist staff agency that he is connected to. You will learn about this in more detail in module 4 organizations also, that specialists in every organization are indirectly subjected to dual control of generalist and technocrat. It is not meant to be, it is not designed to be in that way, but it happens. Invariably, indirectly, it happens that specialists in every organization are subject to dual control of generalist and technocrats. So there is a contradiction between specialization and unity of command. If you are a specialist, there is no unity of command for you. Another contradiction is principle of span of control. We have learnt about what principle of span of control is, that one person cannot effectively manage many people. So one principle asserts that administrative efficiency is increased by reducing the levels of organization. This is supposed to help the simplification of procedures. So if you reduce the levels of organizations, then the procedures become simplified if there are less levels in organization. If you remember the gangplank concept of Henry Fayol, the scalar chain concept of Henry Fayol, why did Henry Fayol give us the gangplank concept? He told us that when there are many levels, you should use gangplank because the levels are more. But scalar chain is of more importance than gangplank, right? So scalar chain should be followed wherever possible, and for that levels of organization should be less. So if there are less levels of organization, efficiency is increased. It is one of the principles, right? But when levels are thus reduced, span of control increases. Obviously now you have reduced the levels, so more persons come under one supervisor. So when you reduce the level, span of control increases. Moreover, specification of the ideal number of subordinates as between 5 and 11 has no scientific validity at all. So let's say Urvik says that 5 or 6 are the ideal span of control number. Ian Hamilton says 3 or 4 is the ideal number. Some other people say 10 or 12 is the ideal number. So there is no scientific validity. This is the another contradiction with span of control. First of all, if you reduce the levels of organization, span of control increases. Also, there is no agreement among the authors for a specific and scientific validation of a span of control number. They are at best criteria for describing and diagnosing administrative situations. This is what Herbert Simon says about principles of organization, that they are at best criteria for describing and diagnosing administrative situations and nothing more than that. Perhaps the most critical failure of classical administrative science is its incapacity to confront theory with evidence. The principles tend to dissolve when put to test. Partly this is because of the consequence of difficulties in operation. It is not possible to conduct controlled experiments to test the theories time and again. So basically, whatever theory the classical theorists have come up with, they do not confront that with the evidence. It is just theory. They have laid down some principles and there is no practical evidence to support that. And when you try to experiment with those principles, you are not able to do that. Why? Because the principles tend to dissolve when put to test. And why is this so? Why you are not able to experiment with this in real life? Partly because consequences of difficulties in operation. If you apply all of these principles in a single organization, there will be difficulties in the operation of organization and you have to discard some of the principles. So there are difficulties in the operation of an organization if you apply all of these principles, and that is why it is not possible to conduct controlled experiments to test the theories time and again. This is the most critical failure of classical administrative science, that there is no evidence to support, there is no practical evidence to support the theory. Theoretical evidence can be given, but there is no practical evidence to support the theory. These are the criticisms of Herbert Simon about principles of organization, and Herbert Simon is the person who talked at length about criticisms of principles of organization. So moving on, other criticisms are neglect of human element of mechanistic approach. We know this, we are reading about this since F.W. Taylor and Henry Fayol and everything. We know that classical theorists have neglected the human side or the human emotions in organization. It is more of a mechanistic approach. Please refer previous sessions of Taylor and Fayol for more in-depth detail of this criticism. To counter this criticism, we can say that there is some evidence in the writings of classical theorists that they were aware of the human element in organizations. How so? Refer Human Factor and Time in Public Administration by Luther Gulick. After 50 years he came back and said that yes, humans are important, right? So there is some evidence in the writings of classical theorists that they were aware of the human element in organizations. However, they took into consideration only the rational behavior of humans. What is the rational behavior of humans? Rationality means finding all the alternatives to a given problem, weighing the pros and cons of all the given alternatives and choosing the best alternative after weighing all the pros and cons. So that is nothing but rational decision. So there is evidence that classical theorists were aware of human elements in organizations. However, they took into consideration only the rational behavior of humans. It was left to the authors like Herbert Simon to point out the several limitations to rationality in human behavior. Rationality in decision making as well as behavior changes for every employee and depends on his or her perception of goals of organization. When we'll study Herbert Simon's decision making model, he has dealt with this in detail. Herbert Simon has dealt with rationality of human behavior in detail, and he has said that rationality changes from person to person. It depends on my perception of things. My perception of rationality will be different from your perception of rationality. So rationality in decision making is something which is subjective. It changes from person to person. Thus the subjective character of rationality does not receive due attention from the classical theorists. So this is what the criticisms of neglect of human element or mechanistic approaches. Basically we have dealt with this in previous sessions of Taylor and Fayol. To counter that, we can say that they were aware of human element, but they majorly focused on rational element, but rational element is subjective. So moving on, neglect of informal process is another criticism. Gulick and Ervik have shown concern only for formal organization, the rules and principles based organization. They show only concern for formal organization, neglecting the informal variables. What are the informal variables or the informal organization? The bondings that employees create among themselves while working in an organization. For example, if I am working in a company, I might develop a friend group. That is an informal organization which I am developing inside a formal organization. So Gulick and Ervik basically show no concern for that. Why? Basically because they have neglected the human side, right? And that is why they neglected the informal variables inside the formal organization, which are important for the understanding of organizations. Organizations do not conform to the formal order all the time. Humans behave in a way that suits their instincts and wants. Hence the actual behavior always differs from the intended behavior. Neglect of this vital truth is very unrealistic. This is the neglect of informal process. It is very unrealistic that Gulick and Ervik have neglected the informal process. Next criticism is neglect of dynamic nature of administration. Administration functions in ever-changing setting. We have already seen that after 50 years Gulick came back and said that time is very important, but in 1937, way back when he gave his papers of science of administration, he did not consider time as important. Administrative functions are in a ever changing setting, right? Time is ever evolving. The culture that the organizations are setting is changing with time. So society as a whole is changing, so organizations should change with time. So administration is an ever changing setting. As Alfred Diamond says, most of the conceptual constraints in organization have a steady state bias. They are steady, they do not change with time. These are the constraints, these are the most of the conceptual constraints in organization, that they have a steady state bias. The organization and organization goals undergo a constant change as a result of economic, social or political stimuli. So with time, economic goals change, social goals change, political goals change. So all of this should be considered, and classical thinkers have not considered this. Gulick to some extent was aware of the role of change when he observed that principles appropriate at one stage may not be appropriate at all during succeeding stages. So Gulick was to some extent aware of these changes, but he did not basically deal with it in detail. He did not deal with it in exhaustive nature. So basically Gulick and Ervik both have neglected the dynamic nature or the time setting of the administration. After 50 years, obviously Gulick came back and recognized that, but this was not the case way back in 1937. So we are done with our session on Gulick and Ervik, and next session will be on Mooney and Riley. Subscribe to the channel if you do not want to miss the next session. Hope to see you soon again. Peace out.